Working on a book now, which I'm having more fun with than any of the books that I've written, called Deconstructing Race, Microcultures Shifting the Multicultural Paradigm. And I'm making the argument that these assigned racial categories that people are in as a result of white supremacy, and there are only 5 major categories that they try to fit everybody in, need to be complicated, need to be made more nuanced. And when we do that, we ultimately find that the categories are completely inappropriate for trying to define how people are actually positioned in the world in their daily lives. And do their, using Claude Steele's notion of, like identity contingencies that we all have. So it gets away from, like white privilege and this. It's not to say that white privilege isn't a major thing, but that might be an identity contingency that a white male may be able to evidence at a given moment, whereas a white female in a parking lot at 6 a.m. in the morning is not feeling that white privilege at all. She's feeling something very, very different because of her identity contingency. So the notion that we can begin to think of ways that we all are individually positioned in the complex, society and cultures that we live in that are continually globally, influenced. And at the same time, that second part of that title, the notion of microcultures shifting the multicultural paradigm too, and also facilitating a kind of deconstruction of these static racial categories, is the notion that, and this is born on a little James G. and this notion of affinity groups, which he outlines in the 36 Principles of Learning with New Media. But when people are making selections, agentive selections to join affinity groups, whether it's a gaming group, a World of Warcraft, or you want to get into K-pop, or you're into anime, or you're into manga, or hip-hop, the time that you spend in that, the amount of time that you spend in those practices, and the kinds of perspectives that emerge as a result of you engaging in those practices changes your positionality such that you may be a twin, and your twin brother or sister may have a profile of identity construction that's so different from you, it's just gonna begin to be completely inaccurate to try to localize someone's perception of themselves and the practices that they engage in to some simplistic, static notion of racial categories, which themselves are completely socially constructed, right? I mean, white supremacy just constructed these categories for its own benefit to be able to have simple ways of designating the people that the people who are controlling white supremacist ideology want to, exploit. So the question is, how do we begin to deconstruct that? And one of the things that's happening on its own is the microcultural positions and perspectives and practices and prerogatives, the choices that people are making. I might be look like an African-American man, but I'm making choices of how I'm going to spend my time, who I'm going to be able to associate with. Some of that's agentive, some of that's a part of the job that I may happen to do.